Hey everybody, this is Pastor Scott from South Salem United Methodist Church, and we are taking a break for the time being from in-person worship because of the local COVID spread. So hope to be getting back to worshiping together at church, maybe even next Sunday. We'll see what happens in the local spread. The rates, we'll see if the rates come down. Once the rates start dropping, the plan is that we'll go back to in-person worship. So I'll keep you informed. But anyway, I hope you have a wonderful week this week, and hope your day is going well. I want to talk about one of my favorite books of the Bible, and I think as a middle-aged adult, I stumbled on Ecclesiastes as for the first time as a book that is a very important book when it comes to shuffling our priorities and trying to figure out what life is really about. And a lot of people will start reading Ecclesiastes. It's in the Old Testament. It's the book just past Psalms and Proverbs, and written by King Solomon when Solomon was an older person and looking back on his life. And a lot of the book comes across as sounding somewhat depressing or hopeless maybe, but I don't see it that way at all. And I think if you understand why he was writing this and the purpose of this writing, it no longer at all seems depressing. It just seems it seems to be a reshuffling of priorities. So he was looking back on his life at an older age, and he was kind of going through all the things that he thought were important and things that he had done even in his life, experiences that he had and accomplishments, things that he had put all his energy into, or most of his energy into. And he had this entire list of areas of his life that he recounts in this book. Everything from, building great structures and buildings and gardens and overseeing, all these people and projects that he, as king, as a master builder and genius. I mean, Solomon was gifted with wisdom more than any other person, the Bible says, and because he asked for it in a humble way, God gave him his request. And so Solomon was a very wise man. So he was able to not only to oversee his kingdom, but to install these incredible inventions and systems, and he put systems in place and ruled his people with tremendous wisdom and progress. And the Israelites under his rule were envied by all the peoples of the world. Solomon was known to be an incredible leader and a gifted intellectual and genius, if you will, who actually brought, through his wisdom, through God's granting him of his prayers, brought peace to his land and tremendous prosperity. And so that's the backdrop of why he's writing this at a later time. But this book, Ecclesiastes, goes through all the things that he would have been envied for and admired for. And basically he looks back on all these things and he said, they're rubbish. It's like trying to catch the wind, he said. It's meaningless. That's the word he kept using about his life. Meaningless. I've done this. I've done that. I've accomplished this. I have an incredible reputation. I've worked and I have an incredible, impeccable career. And then he goes into the other areas, which would actually be areas that were, people would look up to him too as well, but also areas that would have brought pain to him and regret. And those were areas surrounding how he spent his time apart from God, doing things like chasing after women, chasing after pleasure and food and drink and women and song. And he talks about that in this book. He looks and accounts all these things that he's done and accomplished and pleasures and experiences, and he says, you know what, they left me empty. They were not what I thought. They did not bring me lasting contentment and joy and fill my life up. Instead, here I am, an older man that feels empty and disappointed. And that's what this book is. Ecclesiastes is a book of reshuffled priorities and realizing what's important and what's not so important. And maybe this COVID virus has done something like that for you, where you've been forced to be more contemplative, contemplating how your life is, or where you've spent your energy, and things that you were able to do you can no longer do because of COVID or illness, maybe as because you contracted COVID. Maybe it's forced you to look at priorities and look at what matters in this life. So if you're in that sort of a situation where you're kind of looking at what's important, Ecclesiastes is a great book to read. It really is. And it's not depressing. It is actually God breaking through finally in the life of his son, Solomon, his spiritual son, of course, breaking through, and Solomon coming to grips and coming to the awareness that life is, it's pleasurable and it's good to enjoy the pleasures of life, but life is more important than just those pleasures or accomplishments. Life is all about serving God, being of service to him, being in his kingdom, doing his work. And it's the little things, and it's the righteousness that we seek after that produces happiness, produces peace and contentment. And those things last, unlike worldly happiness, which is based on our circumstances. So that's why I like this book. It certainly is not depressing. It's more hopeful, because you realize you don't have to do all these things or accomplish or experience all these things, Solomon was rich, and we don't have the ability, as non-rich people, we don't have the ability to chase after all the pleasures that we'd like to. We don't have the ability to build and be architects, and some of us do, but we don't typically have that opportunity that he had to do everything he wanted to do and chase every dream. And so it's a hopeful book, because we realize we don't have to do all that. We don't have to accomplish all these things. We don't have to build a resume of why life is good. We don't have to seek after tremendous pleasure or entertainment, or we don't have to seek after a great reputation. We may not be known by many people at all. It may just be our family that really knows us or understands what we're about. And we can be content with that. And actually, if we're serving God, God will bring us the reputation. He'll bless our relationships, and we'll be filled up with what we're doing just with those few people. You don't have to reach 1 million people to have a great life. You can reach 1 or 2 or 3 and have a purposeful life that God uses to glorify him and to bless these 3 people or 2 people. Whatever God puts in front of you, this book tells us, that's where we need to seek to pour ourselves into for the glory of God. And whatever God lays before us this day, that's what we're given to serve him with and to use to bless others. So I like this book. I think this book is a wonderful reshuffling, a look at what are our priorities, what matters in this life. And all throughout this book, you can see the emptiness and meaninglessness of chasing after anything other than being obedient to God and having a relationship with God. Everything else that we do if it's for our own entertainment, even if it's for our own happiness, for our own reputation. Everything we do basically amounts to nothing compared to glorifying God and serving Him. And that is the life that brings contentment. So there's a passage in this book I'd like to read, and it's my favorite passage out of my favorite book. And you can find it. This is Ecclesiastes chapter 5. And boy, there's just so much. I'd like to read the whole book to you, but let's start with Ecclesiastes 5, chapter 10, and I'm going to read up through chapter 6. So I'm starting on Ecclesiastes 5, verse 10, and I'm going to read all the way through. It's 20 verses, or 15 counting 5. Oh, wait a minute, I don't know what I'm saying. I'm starting at 10 and reading up to 20, so it's 10 verses. But let's start with chapter 5, verse 10. Whoever loves money never has enough money. Whoever loves wealth is never satisfied with his income. This too is meaningless. And again, this word meaningless, he throws this around. He attaches this to all the things that he chased after as a young man. Well, let me go on. As goods increase, so do those who consume them. And what benefit are they to the owner, except to feast his eyes on them? The sleep of a laborer is sweet, whether he eats little or much, but the abundance of a rich man permits him no sleep. And basically, I take this to mean that the more you have, the more possessions, the more things you have to take care of, the more you worry about them and wonder how to take care of them or how to protect them or how to keep other people from getting them. So the more wealth and the more assets and possessions you have, the less sleep you get because you're more worried about things. You're more laden down by the burden of all that management and ownership. So he's saying here that a simple life, a life without an abundance of wealth, is a blessing, and you sleep better. That's what he's saying. There's more peace with a simplified life. Let me go on here. Verse 13. I've seen a grievous evil under the sun, wealth hoarded to the harm of its owner, or wealth lost through some misfortune, so that when he has a son, there's nothing left for him. Naked a man comes from his mother's womb, and as he comes, so he departs. He takes nothing from his labor that he can carry in his hand. This too is a grievous evil. As man comes, so he departs. And what does he gain since he toils for the wind? All his days he eats in darkness with great frustration, affliction, and anger. There's a lot of anger around. I don't know if you've noticed that, but I think the COVID virus, there's a great sense of frustration and depression, and I think there's a lot of anger and I don't even know if it's defined or if it's targeted at any certain person, but just seems to be a lot of restlessness these days, and I say a lot of anger, a lot of people who are not satisfied. It's almost like they're portraying this book in real life. They're showing that a life of chasing goods and wealth and a life of feasting your eyes on what you've got and protecting that and trying to take care of it all. As fragile as things are, you could be gone in a minute. Anything you have, anything I have, it's nice, but it could be gone tomorrow. And so why should I make that my priority? Why should I expect that to carry me until the rest of my life when I could lose that tomorrow? So that's what he's saying here. There's a lot of toil that basically he said is just thrown into the wind. We're working to protect and to keep our life filled with possessions and blessed, and that's a great thing if you have it, but it also can misdirect you to expect that to be your God and give you protection, long life, and satisfaction when those things are just, we're almost worshiping the things of the Creator and not the Creator himself, and seeking relationship with him. So he's saying here that all that pursuit, if we're not pursuing God, um, we're just wasting our time, and we're chasing after the wrong God. And so that's what this says to me. And that, we came into this world not knowing, nobody knew when we were born what was going to come. Nobody knew what to expect. Nobody knew what town they'd be in or what family they'd be with. It's just kind of God's created this world and created our parents and created a situation for us to be born into, whatever that might be. And we had no control over that. And and so we come into this world with nothing. And you know what? Whatever your circumstances are, when you leave this world, again, you will leave, and you will enter into the judgment with nothing in your hands. And it's almost like the song, "Nothing in my hands I bring, but only to the cross I cling." And that's the situation that Solomon's talking about here. We can't hold on to it. It's like sand that just slinks through our hand, falls through our hand. We're trying to grab onto something that's not real, and we cannot expect to build our life or to build up our possessions and then rest comfortably on a pile of stuff. It's not going to last. It's not going to hold our weight, and it could be gone tomorrow. So that's what I like so far about this particular passage. And then here's verse 18, and here's where Solomon he's writing about having an epiphany, a revelation. He says, "Then I realized that it is good and proper for a man to eat and drink and find satisfaction in his work under the sun during the few days of life God has given him, for this is his lot. Moreover, when God gives any man wealth and possessions and enables him to enjoy them, to accept his lot, to be happy with his work, this is a gift of God." So in other words, the happiness comes from God, not from having these things. If you are able to recognize your blessings and be grateful for them, particularly if you share them and use your gifts and blessings to benefit others, God gives you happiness. If you can appreciate the blessings that he's given you, God will allow you to be satisfied or happy temporarily in those blessings, but not eternally. God will allow you to be satisfied with the life he's given to you and grateful for it, and the pleasure and happiness that comes from having these blessings. You'll see them as a good thing. You'll celebrate them, but you will not expect these things to rescue you or to save you or to keep you from having suffering, which suffering comes from this life. You'll still age. You'll still suffer. You'll still lose loved ones. You'll still struggle with who you are and why are you living? What's your purpose? Until you find the God who made you, your Father, your Creator, and until you rest on him and put yourself completely in his care. And so he's saying here, it's proper to enjoy eating and drinking. Those are gifts. It's proper and good to enjoy your work and recognize that God has given you something to do, and use your work to glorify God, whatever you do, whether you're a custodian, whether you're a fast food cashier, whether you're a CFO of a major company, whatever you're doing, you can bless the lives of others by your service to God, by your demeanor, by the love that you give others, by the attention and the prayer that you give others. You can use whatever work that you're in to be a blessing to other people just by your presence and who you are at work. You can be one of those people in a workplace who people look forward to seeing, who people look forward to you coming and being there at work, who people look forward to sharing their life, their job with you. You can be one of those people rather than one of those people that is not looked forward to as they show up for work, who brings people down, who complains, who is never satisfied, who uses greed and selfishness to get what they want, to step on other people and constantly maybe criticize or put you down or step on top of you to get what they want, or takes the credit for everything. You know, people like that, they want to constantly jockey for position to be noticed by the boss or by the company. And so just who you are as the Lord's servant can be a ministry to wherever you're working, whatever you're doing, anything. If you're a stay-at-home mom or a stay-at-home dad, you can be a tremendous blessing to your children. You can be a tremendous blessing to your neighbor if you're sharing any part of your life with them. Whatever you're doing, wherever you are, enjoy it. This book is saying, enjoy your life, enjoy your work, be satisfied with it, be grateful for it. Count any blessing that you have as good, and eat and drink, and enjoy enjoy your food, enjoy your have a nice cup of water that's cold, and it's use that moment to be a prayerful moment. Thank you, God, that I have water. I know of countries, peoples that don't have running clean water. Thank you that I do. Flint, Michigan. I know of people who don't have this. Thank you, God, for blessing me with this. Everywhere you are, whatever you're doing, can be a God situation, can be a moment of contentment. If you can find purpose in it and see God in the middle of it, and be grateful for it. So that's what this passage is saying. Some people have contorted this one verse here, is proper for a man to eat and drink and find satisfaction in his work. You know, some people have contorted that, and you've heard people say, eat and drink, for tomorrow you shall die, and eat, drink, and be merry, for tomorrow you shall die. And they say, well, that's in the Bible. That's in the Bible. It's really not, okay? I mean, the idea of enjoying the blessings and that our life is short, certainly those are in the Bible. But it's not meant to be a license to do whatever you want to do or seek whatever pleasure you want to seek, because we only have a few days, relatively speaking, to enjoy our lives. That's not saying go out and live for yourself or seek every pleasure you could find. That's what Solomon was doing. He said Solomon writes in this book that he had singers who sang for him, women singers. He had a harem of women who served him in every way under the sun. And it did not bring him joy or peace or contentment. And he came to realize that is not where contentment is in the pleasures of life. That's one of the areas among many that he sought pleasure or satisfaction and ended up chasing the wind. And anybody who knows, anybody who's chased pleasure or been end up, a lot of times when you chase pleasure, you end up in addiction rather than happiness. So, and you end up holding an empty bag of nothing. So that's not what this Bible passage is saying. Do whatever you want to do, go for it because you're going to die tomorrow. That's not what this is saying. This is saying, yes, life is short. Relatively speaking, you only have so many days. And the Bible does say count your days, which means treat everyone as a blessing. But the Bible's saying find God in these moments, because for tomorrow you might die. So find your relationship with God and not selfish pleasure or satisfaction. So, and then let me finish this passage that I've been working at reading to you. So I just read, moreover, when God gives any man wealth and possessions and enables him to enjoy them, to accept his lot and be happy in his work, this is a gift of God. And accepting your lot means whatever you're living through, and that includes sickness or tragedy or loss. Accept your lot, the Bible's saying here. Accept it as God's opportunity for God to reach you, to speak to you, to grow you up, to make you stronger. It's a cross that you carry, that you bear a cross in this life. We all do. They're different. All of our crosses are different. But accept it. Accept the lot that God has given you. Find God in the middle of it, and then God will bless your life, and you will be filled with peace and contentment, even joy in the midst of the suffering. And then finally, let me read this last verse. It says, who anyone can do this, who anyone can accept his lot and enjoy the gifts that God gives him. This is verse 20. That person seldom reflects on the days of his life because God keeps him occupied with gladness of heart. Let me repeat that. He seldom reflects on the days of his life because God keeps him occupied with gladness of heart. What does that mean? Isn't reflecting on our lives a good thing? Well, yes, it can be a very good thing. If we're looking down deep and looking for what we need to do or what needs to change, that can be very good. But sometimes reflecting on our life means feeling sorry for ourselves, or comparing ourselves to others, or wishing things had gone differently. Regrets. And sometimes it's a analyzing that we do that just brings us in circles and pulls us down, because we can't stop either feeling sorry for ourselves, comparing ourselves to others, or regretting what's happened to us or what might have happened and wishing it was different. Those kind of reflections is what this is talking about. So if you can enjoy your lot and accept the blessings of God in whatever you're going through, God will relieve you from this self-analysis, this constant overthinking, this being pulled down by your thoughts. God will lift you above all that and give you, keep you occupied, which is an important thing. Sometimes we just need to occupy our minds with other stuff. We need to be thinking about other stuff. We need to escape this vortex of self-pity and regret. And sometimes we just need to be occupied with our lives. Whatever we have in our hands, whatever we have before us this day, we need to put ourselves into it. We need to put ourselves into it and go for it and make it the best. And that's what this book is saying. Because if we do that, God keeps us occupied with gladness of heart. That's contentment, not based on circumstances. So where does happiness, I'll use that word, even though happiness is not as deep as this, as contentment. Where does happiness come from? It comes from God. God gives us happiness. It's a reward for seeking his life, his way. God blesses us and gives us happiness as a reward. That's the way this works. You chase after happiness and you're going to be empty. You chase after God and you're going to be happy. There are times where no matter how deeply we're walking with God, there are times when our life gets a little empty or slows way down, or we feel like we're kind of at a plateau, or where there's nothing new under the sun or no purpose. And I discovered this yesterday. We just feel like we don't want to get out of bed, or we don't want to do something. We don't want to do anything. And if we can just find something that's in front of us, anything that God has given us this day. And for me yesterday, it happened to be just helping out, cleaning up the house, just doing some dishes and doing a couple things around the house. And I put my attention in that. And you know what happened? I'm not a real big fan of doing work or dishes or any of that stuff. I'm not real fond of it. But I got occupied in my head. My mind got occupied. And within a short time, my heart was feeling contentment. Like I was feeling like the day was worth going through. Like I had something to do that was fulfilling, and that is helping out around the house. I had energy suddenly that I didn't have before. So we have to embrace whatever we've got, whatever this day brings us. We have to accept our lot, and we have to find thankfulness in the middle of it and recognize the blessing of it and seek God before anything else. And then God will give us a heart that is occupied and happy. And that's what I'm getting from this book. That's what I get from it when I read it. So I encourage you to read this book, Ecclesiastes. Start from the very beginning of the book, go to the end, and recognize this is a man who is not talking about his feelings today. This is a man who is talking about where his search for pleasure and fame and notoriety and work, and where his search brought him, which is a place of emptiness and meaninglessness, but how he turned that around by recognizing the important thing, and that is serve God, obey God, seek God, and then God provides all the rest. God will provide everything else. Love God with all your heart, your soul, and your mind, and everything else will follow. That's the message for today. Have a great week. We'll stay in touch in terms of what's going on next Sunday, and I'll talk to you soon. God bless you.